Sox fans, welcome to Good Guys Talk Back, a local fan-centric Chicago White Sox podcast, hosted by Nick Murawski and Pat Hester.
Yeah, hey Sox fans, welcome back to Good Guys Talk Back. This is episode 313, if you can believe it. Sometimes I absolutely cannot, that we've been doing it for this long and well past the 300th episode now. Thank you so much for being with me. This podcast live on Sunday nights on the Good Guys Talk Back YouTube channel. Subscribe, like the stream, pass it along to other Sox fans in your life if you have any more left after what has been going on over the last couple of years. Normally, of course, I am joined by my co-host, my best friend, Pat Hester. Pat Hester, not available tonight. As far as I know, who knows? He might jump in later in the show. He's got some stuff going on. You know, Pat is a busy man. He has got many children, and they are very into sports, which is awesome. And he, one of his sons, has got a big baseball tournament going on, and I think the team went to the championship. So things kind of snowballed. He didn't realize they were going to be getting into the championship, and it happened late Sunday night, which is crazy. I don't remember playing, you know, when I played Little League, I don't remember tournaments happening on Sunday night, but that is the way things are going with travel baseball. So Pat, unfortunately, not able to be with us. So I'm asking you, if you're in the chat, if you're following along live here on Sunday night, jump in. Want to hear your thoughts and comments about what is happening with our Chicago White Sox. This is a kind of a callback to the Locked On days. If you were with me, and I sometimes have to call upon this when Pat's Wi-Fi goes out, but if you were with me when I was with Locked On, I did Locked On Chicago White Sox for about a year and a half, which was a solo Chicago White Sox podcast. And now, of course, Todd Welter is doing a wonderful job with it, as Sean Anderson did before myself. And before that, it was Herb Lawrence and Chris Tannehill. And it is continuing, and Todd does a fantastic job. Solo shows are difficult. Now, Locked On, I had a bunch of advertisements, and if you follow that show, you know what I'm talking about. So that was able to fill. But, you know, I've got some thoughts and some notes cobbled together, and I've been doing this for a while, so we'll see. We'll see how this can go. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do an hour-long show. We'll see. You know, I don't want to sell myself short right away, but so my apologies if the show is not to the typical length that you are used to. You know why. But so great having Sydney and JT, Sean, Scott with me here on this Sunday evening as we're saying goodbye to June. And we're entering that month of July where we've got, of course, the All-Star break and the trade deadline looming. We're going to talk a little bit about untouchables. I'd love to hear some of your untouchables. If you throw those in the comments, who should be retained here? There's some articles that came out recently as Chris Getz was talking and Jesse Barfield about this core. They're happy with it. Who should really stay? I mean, there's some obvious ones, and there's kind of some obvious ones that we're going to be saying goodbye to. So we'll get to some of that as well. Yeah. Hey, Howard, welcome. We were off last week, last Sunday. You know, summers are tough too. There's a lot of stuff going on, you know, people on vacation, a lot of events happening. Those summer nights, it gets away from you. So we're back, and it's excited to be back with you here with this team that is now 84 games into the 2025 schedule here. And boy, you know, it feels so different. 2025 feels different than 2024, but it's really, you know, it's really not when you look at the numbers. It really just feels like it. Sox are 28-56 here after 84 games. Now, after 84 games in 2024, the Sox were 23-61. So there's a 5-game difference between last year and this year. Sox are, still really horrible when you're looking, of course, record-wise and numbers and how they stack up not only in the division but all in baseball. But, there's so many people that I have talked to, and I'll get to it when I was standing in line for today's game to get the Aparicio bobblehead and all the people that I ran into. And, you hear this optimism. And where is it coming from? Pat and I have tried to tackle this in recent episodes, and maybe you have too with other Sox fans in your life, or maybe you don't feel that way at all, to each their own. I have felt it just a little different. There's some excitement. They're fun to watch. There's still, crazy, poor baseball, bad base running, stupid decisions. You question the manager. They don't have the talent. There's no offense. There's all of that stuff. But there's something, I don't know, there's something else happening. There's this youth movement that you want to get excited about. At least I'm trying to. And I like what I've seen from the Sox in that respect. It's translated into 5 more games. That's really nothing. But is this something that they're going to build on? Is this for real? Is this something that they can correctly figure out? Can Chris Getz and company figure out, who should we be keeping? Who should we build around? How to manage that? What type of players do we need, to fill in some of these gaps? I'll get to the documentary, the 05 Forever documentary that I watched. And they were kind of talking about that in that first episode. How to find the right guys to complement each other, to perform the type of baseball that they want to perform with, of course, the manager. Can Getz do that? Can Getz and company figure that out? Who to keep, who to let go, and what to retain in the process? Obviously it takes 2 to dance. What teams are out there that need some of the guys that we have that we're ready to offload? So that's kind of, those are a lot of the things that are going through my mind in this, almost all-star break, unofficial halfway point, is we're all looking towards the future, and I think this year has, for me as a fan, has been masked by the 125. We're celebrating 125 years, and there's a lot of nostalgia for me, bringing back old players, and you've got the reunion weekend, which I want to discuss, that's happening in a few weeks. That's going to be just awesome if you can get out to do any of that, if not all of it. So that's kind of like a bit of deodorant over the stink, perhaps, if you can stomach, and if that matters to you. It's mattered to me as a fan. Okay, I get it. You're not going to be good. Let's really lean into 125. And today at the ballpark was one of those days. So Sox here, after 84 games, they're 24 games back in that ever forgiving AL Central. Minus 80 run differential. So that run diff, minus 80, that's the 3rd worst run diff in all of baseball. And the Sox have the 2nd worst record in all of baseball. Colorado, boy, the Colorado Rockies, a team we're going to be seeing this coming week, this 4th of July week, this holiday week, they have a minus 221 run differential. Okay. How about it? Sox Rockies, must watch baseball this coming week. Detroit, now the Detroit Tigers, they lead the Central by 11 games. I haven't really been paying attention much to the top of the Central. 11 games. And Detroit's the only team in the division with a winning record and a positive run diff. Okay, so that division, I still feel like if the Sox could just do a couple things, spend some money, it's not a division that's going to get out of hand. It's not a division where you're going to be really in a competition with other owners of who's going to spend as much and who's going to gobble up as much talent and make crazy aggressive moves like what happens out on the West Coast in the NL. If the Sox could play their cards right here over the next couple of years, I think you could see some competitive, meaningful baseball in September. I'm probably just suffering from heat stroke and dehydration after this weekend, but at least I want to believe that. So the last time we talked, Sox got whipped by St. Louis. I wanted to talk to Pat by that because a lot of his in-laws and his wife and he's got family that are St. Louis Cardinals fans, and I think he was at a game too this past week and how that went. But Sox were whipped by St. Louis. They won a series against Toronto, which was nice to see. Classic Sox. 7-1, 1-7, they put up a ton and then they go quiet. The bats go quiet the next game. Got beat pretty good by Arizona. And the Sox just scored 7 runs in the entire San Francisco Giants series, just 7 runs. But that was good enough to win the series. Sox taking 2 out of 3. Series win against the Giants with Cannon on the hill. Welcome back, Jonathan Cannon, a guy that I really was hoping for big things. There was a couple in front of me at the game today. I didn't quite ask what business they had being at the game, but they were Houston Astros fans. And the gentleman was asking me, he was looking at the numbers for Cannon, and he's like, is this guy better than his numbers? And I'm like, nobody knows right now. It's way too early. A handful, maybe a little bit more than a handful of starts in 2024. First game back after being injured. I mean, this is a guy I think that they see, big stuff from moving forward. At least that's my impression, that he is going to have a hand in this rotation. Kind of like what we thought of maybe Giolito, I guess, and maybe Kopech years ago when it was 2017, 2018. Now, he doesn't have that kind of stuff. He's got a lot of different pitches, which I love. That's the thing about Jonathan Cannon that I like, is his arsenal. And, he didn't have a long outing. And I'll get to some of the things, that I saw. But it was a weird game, too, this Sunday. Very hot, very muggy, but it rained on and off almost the entire game. Never was stopped. The play was never stopped, but that had to have been a little frustrating, and perhaps with footing for a pitcher like Cannon, who's coming back from the injured list. Not to make excuses, but you never know. So Cannon went 3 innings, 3 hits, 1 earned run, 3 walks, and 4 strikeouts. Obviously, they're going to try to ease him back into full swing, listen to his body, how things went. I think it was laborious for him on Sunday from some of the things that I read. He was up against for Justin Verlander, which was kind of another fun thing to see being at the game on Sunday. I mean, Verlander, first ballot Hall of Famer. I think he's like 41, maybe pushing 42 years old. He went 6 innings, 5 hits, 1 earned run, couple of walks, and 3 strikeouts. Justin Verlander has been around. I think a lot of people might remember him, recent memory with the Astros. Like, oh yeah, he pitched for the Astros. That guy won the Cy Young, beat out Dylan Cease. Dylan Cease had that great year. I think it was 2021. Justin Verlander had a better year, which is crazy. Verlander, though, of course, started with the Tigers, and he was a monster. He was a feared monster. When I saw, an upcoming stat line, and I saw that Verlander was going to be on the hill against the White Sox, your stomach just flipped. It was like, well, that's a loss. I mean, he had a stretch where he was just seemingly unbeatable. His stuff was so nasty. Now, he saw major league experience in 2005. How about that with the Detroit Tigers? 2005. Monster years in 06, 07, 2009. I traveled to Detroit with a bunch of friends and my brothers. We went to follow the Sox that year in Detroit and was there for the weekend series. And guess who was pitching the first game of the series? It was a Friday day game. And this was, one of Verlander's really good years. Verlander is on the hill, and he absolutely set the Sox down quietly. I mean, very little was probably even hit out of the infield. It was a depressing game, but it was Verlander. I mean, you just got to tip your cap when Verlander was on the hill, and I'm sure this has how other teams felt about Sale when he was locked in, and even Cease during that magical 2021, and so many other, great pitchers throughout the years. Good pitching always beats good hitting in my mind, or in the Sox sense right now, any hitting whatsoever. I mean, you're that dominant. You just got to say, I'm not going to be able to do anything. It's just goofy stuff that he had. He had 24 wins, Justin Verlander, in 2011. I mean, that was, you look back on that, and here he's still slinging in 2025. Scary dude. Sydney in the chat, Comerica is a pretty nice park. Now, I was there in 2009, and Detroit was in bad shape at that point. Downtown was just desolate, boarded up. There was very little happening around that ballpark. You saw the possibilities. There was some nightlife. We had to kind of go off the beaten path out of that downtown area to get to some, just kind of some fun bars with some life, because in the evening, I mean, there's just nothing happened, especially on Friday. There was really no business being done in downtown Detroit. So there was very little nightlife at that time. From what I understand, and I've been back since, it's definitely built back up. There's been a lot of life put back into Detroit. And the stadium was beautiful. It was a nice stadium, but I didn't particularly like the city at all at that time. And I had my fair share of issues with fans. They were pretty prickly, but I wasn't in the best frame of mind at that point in my life. I wasn't a very good fan either. But I just aggravated. I think I was just absolutely aggravated to just be manhandled by Justin Verlander, even though, hey, respect to the guy, because what kind of pitcher he was. But Detroit fans were giving it to us. They really were. And we had that at several other ballparks. Yankee fans, that was a whole nightmare when we were there. Boston fans will give it to you, but it's in good fun. Philly fans, again, just like we were kind of a no threat. It was those divisional series, Minnesota too. You can find some salty Minnesota fans. KC, not so much. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to eat your barbecue and get out of this town after I see my Sox play. And that was fine. Okay. Verlander, what are you going to do? But hey, Sox took the series and took the game 5-2. Robert Jr. on the IL. This it was announced. I think before the game they were a little iffy, and then I did see before the game it was announced that he was going to be headed to the IL. And this is depends on how you look at Verlander, or I'm sorry, Robert Jr. I look at it as he's good as gone. I'm not holding my breath that we're going to retain him and keep them through some more of these lean years, even though, there's club options and this, that, and the other. And I think he knows that's the case. And it's really, unfortunate, but, and I know one of Pat's kids, huge Robert Jr. fan. And as most young Sox fans are, that is the superstar, right? Unless you're starting to get behind some of these younger guys and say, oh, these guys are coming up, but I like the way they're playing, but they're not of anywhere near caliber of what Luis Robert Jr. has done. And possibly the potential, if you want to talk about that. So if you're of the mindset of like trade deadline is, we want to get a haul for Luis Robert Jr. Pat and I have talked about it, throughout this season and even during spring training. You want him to stay healthy. You need him to have just a crazy, crazy monster first half, where he is just a man of danger at the plate. And He's stayed healthy up until now, but he has been anemic offensively. Small flashes, nothing what we wanted and we're hoping for if you're going to get a haul. The Sox wanted a haul before the season started. Remember that? They wanted a team's top prospects, give me the farm, all this kind of stuff. That's not the case. I don't know what you can expect getting back for Luis Robert Jr. I really don't. But I know they're going to move him. They want to move him. I know that that's a target. So him going to the IL bums me, unfortunately, because I want him to be healthy down this stretch, this leading up to the deadline. And I get it. There are some people that are, I want to see him play. I'm coming to Sox games for Luis Robert Jr. I get that too. And I know that there's a lot of Sox fans that are holding out hope that he's going to stick around. And, the Sox might think differently and hold on to him. I don't see that, much like I didn't see that with Dylan Cease or Giolito when that occurred. I understood the Crochet thing. I bring the Garrett Crochet thing up quite a bit because that's the guy that I think is going to be a real force. I just went on about Verlander. I can't say that Crochet is going to have a Verlander type of career, but Crochet, you could see he had powerful, scary stuff. Now, there's that threat of injury and durability, but he was a guy that I thought they could really – he's your anchor. They could build around in terms of a staff. But, hey, I'm excited about what they got back in the return. I'm excited about, what we're seeing from these guys and Gonzalez and, Teal and Mydroth and there's more. And that was something that Chris Getz talked about this past week is in terms of the core, these young guys. I mean, really, you got to look at the Crochet haul. Those guys are, they're producing. They're just giving you hope as a Sox fan, in my opinion. So, Robert Jr., it's a big whatever. It's a big eye roll. It's a big whatever. I hope he could come back and produce and put his talents on display. Even for him, he can't want to be around here. He's saying all the right things and wants to continue to wear a Sox uniform. And, but he gets it. He's even talked about it. He knows what his value is right now. And I think he would love to play on a competitive team. Who wouldn't, right? With his skill set, his potential. And if a team could fit him into what they have already and have got the system to give up some guys, there's going to be a partnership. I think there's going to be a deal. Hopefully it's not a long IL stint and he can come back and, he can contribute. So I was at the game here on Sunday, June 29th. It was the Louis Aparicio bobblehead. I've got this fine bobblehead right here next to me showing it on the YouTube, the live show right now. I know a lot of other people that are in the chat were at the game for this. Louis Aparicio's got the 59 leadoff hitter for the Go-Go Sox, that 1959 team. Had a couple stints with the White Sox. Only Venezuelan in the Hall of Fame. He's still alive, 91 years old. This bobblehead, really interesting. You don't see a lot of bobbleheads where it's the feet first slide. You got a lot of head first slides. This feet first slide for Louis here, that was off of a Sports Illustrated cover, much like the Dick Allen bobblehead. That was modeled off of an iconic Sports Illustrated cover. So pretty cool. I was standing in line with some people. I got there early, of course, as I always do. We're talking to a couple different people, and one guy I'm talking to, he was first in line, and he's telling me that, this is what he does. He doesn't even collect bobbleheads. He offers his services to people that can't make the game. They buy a ticket and they send it to him through, I guess, the MLB app. And he goes and he stands in line for them. and he gets the bobblehead, and I don't know if if he ships it out to them or he picks it up. He had 3 tickets, and he was going to be going in line 3 separate times to get 3 different bobbleheads for people. And he tells me this is what he loves to do. He loves standing in line. This is his thing. And I'm like, you're like, this is your business. You need a business card. It's not a bad idea. Obviously on the secondary market, you could also do it and just buy it on eBay or something. But if you get a $14 cheap ticket upper deck, send it to this guy, and he's not charging or anything. He just likes doing it just to interact with people, standing in line, getting out, and he gets to see a game for it. That's crazy. When I lived in Washington, D.C. years ago, there were all these trendy restaurants, and they didn't take reservations. And what you had to do is they told you like when the restaurant was going to be opening up for seating, and you had to stand in line. Like if you wanted to go to these restaurants and say you went, that's basically what it is. You can just claim and brag about it that you went to these restaurants. You had to go stand in line. And there were people that we found out that was like their side gig, is they would stand in line for you. Okay. So you could, back then, I don't know how they did this. If there was a QR code or if they had a business card or social media, probably you got in touch with these people. They would stand in line for you. All right. Until you were ready or whatever, because you had to, obviously, maybe if the restaurant opened at 5, you had to be in line at like 3:30 or maybe at 3, just for a chance to get into this place, because these were small, like boutique restaurants, and that was somebody's side hustle. And there were a couple people that were doing it. It's crazy. They just stood in line and waited for somebody to get off work or whatever. And then they just switched spots with them. You gave them whatever you gave them, you charge. I thought that was an interesting concept for this gentleman. It was just, standing in line for people, getting people bobbleheads. And he's like, I don't want the bobbleheads. I just like talking to people and going to the game and helping people out. He's like the Robin Hood of, bobblehead collectors, I guess, because he's telling me about all the extra bobbleheads. He goes up to fans that are coming to see the White Sox from different cities and different stadiums. And he goes up to him and he asks him, are you keeping the bobblehead? Are you going to take it home with you? He was asking San Francisco Giant fans in line, are you going to hold on to the bobblehead? Because I'll take it off your hands. Well, this has happened for him, where he's accrued all these extra bobbleheads, and he hands them out to kids. He'll go up to kids, parents. He'll say to the parents, hey, did your kids end up getting a bobblehead? And they'll say, no, we were too late. We didn't get one. He's almost like a Santa Claus. He's got a satchel of bobbleheads that he's just collected through the game, and he's handing them out to people that didn't get a chance to get one. So, I mean, it's an interesting concept. Trey, welcome, buddy. Peyton, welcome. Trey, I'm solo, buddy. Pat had some engagements, and I'm going solo. So appreciate you jumping in the stream here. Like the stream, pass it along, all that good stuff. I'm just talking about my time here at the beginning of this bobblehead event. So I'm standing next to somebody that older than me, probably in their 70s. This gentleman. Here's the other thing about getting there early. You do meet some interesting people. These are, really passionate people that are collectors, but they're also just big time Sox fans. And this gentleman was talking about, he lived in Bridgeport, and he's telling me about watching Louis Aparicio, and what kind of player he was and how the crowd would react and seeing him and how much of a fan favorite. And he's like, I'm here because of, I don't really get into bobbleheads or anything, but they're doing a Louis Aparicio, and he was my guy. And I've heard stories about Louis Aparicio, and, you've seen video and read articles, but I really appreciate talking to fans that had that, first person experience, and this is the season for that, And we started to talk about, baseball, and all the different people that he saw, and, how baseball has changed. And, we obviously started talking about the '05 team. And, when I talk to fans that are older than me, like from his era, like 65, 70, and what we ultimately land on is injuries. Why are players getting injured so much? And that's what, again, we landed on. And this gentleman just like, I don't get it. Back in the day, these guys didn't get injured, and these pitchers were pitching sometimes 9-12 innings depending how the game was going, and nobody got taken out of games, and these guys would play through anything. And obviously money and advertisements and contracts and all the other stuff, but we always land on injuries, and I think of all the stuff that you guys battled, like Moncada and Jimenez and Robert for so many years, now back on the IL. And I always thought, these guys that are just like muscle bound, they're so fit, they're so muscular, and it's maybe not as much flexibility. There's more muscles to strain and tear and rip and have problems with. But I don't know, it's interesting talking to this gentleman, and then of course talking to the bobblehead line guy. I didn't catch his name, but fascinating. So maybe we'll see him. The next big bobblehead event is going to be that reunion. It's going to be that Four Horsemen bobblehead on Sunday, I think July 13th. Man, they're giving these out to the first 7,500, and there was a good line that formed. Definitely, gates open at 11:40 for a 110 game, so like 11:10 there was a really good line. And you got to assume every gate had a really good line. I'm curious if you were walking up, if you're walking up at 12:30, did you get one? I don't know. Now, I get in early for a lot of different reasons. I had my son, my wife was with me. I get in early. They've got like face painting for the kids, balloon animals. We get up to the kid zone. He can race Robert Jr. We get, our food, whatever we need, get to our seats. We're able to have, something to eat. Then we walk around to see other things. So it pays to get there early. Not only can I, conquer my anxiety with not getting a bobblehead, but you get to all these different things when you've got little kids. That's also a highlight of it. So the next one that I'll be at is going to be that July 13th, that reunion weekend. And that's going to be something else, man. That's one heck of a bobblehead. I've never seen something like that. And for what it stands and what it means, and really that was just, it's never going to happen again. 4 pitchers throwing complete games with the brevity of that situation, the ALCS, you're never going to see it again. And that's awesome that they're honoring it that weekend with that type of bobblehead. So speaking of pitching, a dude that, who knows, maybe he'll have a bobblehead one day in the near future. Grant Taylor, man, this guy is a fireballer. He's had some action since being called up. Didn't see him in the finale, but he's pitched, man. I think he pitched on Saturday, and these are the types of guys that you start kind of dreaming a little bit about. Like, okay, is this just all adrenaline? Is he going to get figured out? He's already had Tommy John surgery. Is this our future? Is this guy somebody that, I sure hope so. Man, I sure hope this guy can stick around and develop. Grant Taylor picked up his second career save, going 2 innings for a second straight outing on Saturday. Recorded 7 pitches at 100 miles per hour or above, and 17 of his 18 four-seamers were at 99 plus miles per hour. That was from Scott Merkin. Yeah, that's a guy that, those are the silver linings when you look at the record. Because if you're not watching the games, which I don't blame you, okay, they're a tough watch. if you're not watching these games and you're just seeing, the final line and you're looking at the standings, I do believe there's stuff happening in the game, in the series, that's much different than 2024, and that gives you hope moving forward. We've been down this road before with this hope. We've talked about it on this program. You've talked about it with your Sox friends and family at home. We went through this in 17, 18, 19. Why should this be different? I don't know. Because it's different, because it's a different year, because it's a different admin, same owner. I get that, but I'm trying to make an excuse to, get excited. And this guy Taylor definitely gives me that kind of excitement. Adrian Hauser. Now, here's a guy that I don't think is going to be around on the club past the trade deadline. You could look at him like an Eric Fetty, even though Eric Fetty was signed, in the offseason. Adrian Hauser just brought in rather recently, but Hauser pitched on Saturday in Game 2 of the Giants series. 7 innings, 4 hits, 0 earned runs, a walk, 5 Ks. He's got a sub-2 ERA. Hauser has had 5 starts in a White Sox uniform, has not had an outing with less than 5 innings. And that outing he had on Saturday, that was his high watermark with innings, 7 innings. He's been fun to watch. I think he gets it too. He's like, okay, I've been given second life in this Sox uniform, and this isn't how I want things to go. I don't want to be on this type of club. They're going nowhere, but I can audition, and we could get something handsome in return. We'll see. But he's a guy that I think is, he's gone with Luis Robert Jr. And, there's a few other guys, that look, arms, man. People are looking for arms. People are looking obviously to shore up that rotation, look at their bullpen. It's just how it goes. Obviously, if you've got a spot in your roster for a big bat, you need that power. You're not going to pass it up, but I feel like pitching is the thing that gets gobbled up. If you've got those bullpen arms, we've seen that happen to us recently. We give up those bullpen arms and we get something, because these teams, I feel like sometimes a club looks around and they say, wow, we did not think we were going to be here in this situation. Look here we are. We're nipping at a wild card spot, or we're even nipping at the division. What are we lacking? Well, it's usually pitching depth. Okay, we might not be here next year. Let's just go all in. Let's gobble up the arms, a lot of lefty bullpen arms, And so in terms of Hauser, I could see obviously him being highly coveted. So let's continue the 05 vibes. I'm sorry, I can't stop talking about the 05 team this year. I know people are sick and tired of hearing about it. I actually mentioned to some people this past week, and I'm like, don't look now, but it's the 40th anniversary of the 85 Bears coming up here, the 40th anniversary. And damn well that is going to be talked about. Hopefully the play from the Chicago Bears, can leapfrog just leaning on nostalgia. But I get it. People are sick and tired of all these anniversaries, and we got to drum up this team again. But look, man, in an era right now that the Sox are in, I got to go to those good memories, those good feelings. And there's a documentary. Hopefully you've seen it. Maybe you didn't, but they're dropping these mini episodes, I guess. I think every Thursday now. The most recent one came back June 28th. Came out June 28th. The next one I think is going to be Thursday, July 3rd. And the documentary, it's on YouTube, is called 05 Forever. And just the title alone, I got chills. And so I watched it. I watched it on Saturday. It's 13 minutes, 13 and change for that first episode. And it was a lot on building the team. A little too much Kenny Williams for me, of course, but he had his hand in it, man. He had his fingerprints all over that club. Rick Hahn had some screen time. But you hear from guys like Tadahito Iguchi and Jermaine Dye, Scott Podsednik, John Garland, Mark Burley, AJ, Paulie, and how that team was formed in the offseason and what was going on, losing Carlos Lee and losing Maglio Ordonez. And in 2004, they brought in Freddie Garcia, and we gave away a catcher. And I was really, I was ticked about that because I thought we had something, but I was like, okay, Freddie Garcia, if we could sign him, which we did, if we could keep him, it's not just a one and done thing. Okay, I could see that. And wow, Freddie Garcia, what an anchor to that staff. But how they built that team, they start unraveling it in this first episode of 05 Forever. Wanting to get that speed, telling Scott Podsednik, look, man, don't worry about trying to put a surge into it, which is ironic because of what happened in the World Series. But this isn't your bat, man, or even much of your glove. Like, we need you to get on base. We need your legs. We need your God-given speed. We need you to get on base. And, Kenny Williams talking about how he just saw video of Tadahito Oguchi. Never saw him in person, but saw enough on video to tell Jerry, look, this is the guy. This is the guy we want at second base, and telling Tadahito what your role is going to be. And Ozzie drumming that and instilling that, and Tadahito following that script, and Jermaine Dye getting second life, and the whole AJ Brzezinski situation of, hated, I think, around a lot of clubs around Major League. Hated when he was with the Twins, that's for sure. And Hawk being like neighbors pretty much. Hawk Harrelson living in the same subdivision as AJ Brzezinski. And Kenny getting on the phone with Hawk, and Hawk talking to AJ and creating that conduit. And, AJ just being wearing that black hat, as only AJ can. And I think Ozzie wore it too a lot of times. Like, I'll take the heat. Let's put the heat on me. Let my players do their thing. I'll get out in front of the media. I'll take it. And I don't know. It's just a lot of stuff, I've heard already. I've seen in other little snippets and in read and magazine articles and some of the, other, like, years ago, the DVDs that were put out there. But it's really cool to see this doc now come to life. I heard about it a while ago, as a lot of people did, that they were going to have this in the summer, and now you got it dropping, I think, every Thursday. I don't know how many episodes. I got to look into that, but it looks like the next episode is I think Team Camaraderie. They were kind of hinting on where the whole Don't Stop Believin', how that became kind of an anthem. And you hear from these guys, about, look, we hung out after games. We wanted to be together, where it's you're going out to eat, a bar, playing cards. You wanted to be around each other. And Ozzie's talked about that and how this day and age, it's like game's over, guys split. They got whatever else is going on in their life. And I get it. People have families, man. They got responsibilities. It's like how you put together a team. What kind of chemistry you're going to get might depend on what kind of family life they have. What other demands are in their life. And sometimes you get lightning in a bottle. And that's what I think happened with the 05 team. They were of that age where maybe they didn't have a lot of other responsibilities outside of baseball. And it's like, this is it. And they noticed it kind of quickly. Creedy, Aaron Rowan, Burley, AJ, these bonds, these connections, El Duque, Contreras, that dynamic. I'm really excited to see where this doc goes. So if you haven't checked it out, do yourself a favor. Jump down memory lane if you've got the stomach for it. I know there's a lot of people that are like, I'm done. I'm done with the '05 stuff, but I not me. I'm going to live in this season and appreciate every moment of it. And really looking forward to that reunion weekend. That is, I think, right before the All-Star break. So you've got the Burley statue unveiling on Friday, July 11th. Then you've got the statue replica giveaway, and on Saturday with, I think, the '05 like reunion. I think a lot of players are going to come back and they're going to acknowledge them. And then on Sunday, it is that Four Horsemen bobblehead that they're giving away. And then I believe the All-Star break happens. So the perfect timing, good way to end the first half of the season with that weekend. I'm definitely going to be at that bobblehead game. I'm trying to also work on that Burley statue, that Saturday game. I have a feeling that statue is going to go right between Frank Thomas and Paul Konerko out in the left field area. If you've been past there, it feels like they've moved those statues further apart. And then there's a perfect spot in between those two statues for the Burley statue, which we don't know what it looks like yet. We've seen snippets of, the artist, carving away. And I don't think we've seen an actual, like, what it's really going to look like. Is it going to be his, glove in hand on his head, after the perfect game, something like that? Is it going to be him flipping the ball between his legs to Paul Konerko? One of the most memorable plays, why he's won so many gold gloves. I'm looking forward to that, as I know so many people are. So we talk about the future here, in this episode, talk about it a lot during this season. I was reading something from assistant GM Jesse Barfield recently. This is what he had to say. We are always looking to do what's best for this organization in the short term and a long term. There are guys we identified that we feel really good about being part of the future here. We are pretty adamant on those guys being part of this thing going forward. You've got to, right? I mean, but at this point, if you don't have any idea of who you've got moving forward, I mean, this thing is not tracked well at all, which wouldn't be a shocker for the Chicago White Sox. But, there are guys that you absolutely can identify that are wearing a White Sox jersey right now, and there are guys that are in the pipeline. This was from Merkin to kind of follow on that untouchable sense that Barfield was talking about. That core includes Noah Schultz and Hagen Smith, who are rated the top two left-handed pitching prospects in the game per MLB Pipeline. Schultz struggled in his second start for AAA Charlotte on Friday, walking 4, striking out 4, and allowing 5 runs in 2 innings, but still has a trip to the majors potentially on the 2025 horizon, according to Merkin, while Smith returns to the Barons rotation Saturday after being out since May 10th with some issues, some elbow soreness. You got to factor Montgomery in that as well. He's been hitting the ball lately. A lot of people clamoring for him to be brought up. You want him up now? You want to see Colson Montgomery up now? Do you want to see more from him in the minors, maybe after the All-Star break? After that July 17th break, maybe we're seeing – I think you're going to see Colson Montgomery in 2025, right? It's just when are we going to see that? It's nice to see that he's got that offense going. Can it be sustainable? Okay, can that something that we can see for a longer stretch? So I really look, I've said it to Pat. I've said it to a lot of people, whether it's on the podcast or, we're talking just as Sox fans. Pat and I actually met last Friday. He had an event at a restaurant for work. He somewhere near me. He's like, hey, let's meet up, which is, we don't get to see actually each other in person too often. He's got a very busy life. I've got a lot of stuff going on. We do treasure these opportunities to record and see each other and talk to so many other Sox fans. But we got together and we were just talking Sox as we always do, along with a bunch of other things. And it's like, I just can't put, I can't articulate it exactly of why I should, feel so much hope when the record is what the record is. And I know I don't want to be fooled all over again. This is kind of how it went. They're still not spending any money. The owner is still the owner. There's a lot of other things that are going wrong that I still don't trust Chris Getz, but I like what I'm seeing compared to last year. How can you not? I just, there's a little bit of more energy. There's some spark. You can get behind guys like Mydroth. I like the way that he plays. It's there's hope in my mind. So I that's what I'm going to try to ride a little bit more this season, along with the whole 125 situation and all the fun stuff that they've got going on, and just lean into the nostalgia. I'm at the game today for this Aparicio bobblehead, and got to talk to some great people, and just hear more about Aparicio. Go down that rabbit hole, learn a little bit more about him. I think I've told you on the podcast, there's a great book on the 1959 White Sox. I think it's called Strength Up the Middle. And it really does a nice job. This author really chronicled this team game by game, series by series in the 1959 series, and even, helps you get an idea of where this team was coming from in 57, 58, and the stuff that Al Lopez wanted to do and how the team was formed and his mentality. And of course, Aparicio was in it a bunch. But to kind of get a sense more of Aparicio, the person, the player, and I mean, that was a wonderful day, and get to experience it with, my wife and my son, who's, gosh, he's a fifth generation White Sox fan. I think I was trying to think about that, and it's like he's born into it, like I was born into it, like my parents were born into it. It's a weird way to say, like, you don't have any choice, but that's kind of how it is when you're in a Sox household, like I've been brought up. And I know Pat, shares that sentiment, and talking to other people, not just today, but in other moments, that's how it is. And you kind of need to start them young. They're not a pretty team right now, and you look in other directions, especially to the north, and there's a team that's winning. There's a team that's exciting, but to try to go to the games and share the history with my son and why I'm such a passionate Sox fan, and kind of explain it to, as much as you can, to a toddler, but hopefully you start to put the foundation in place moving forward as years go on, of where the love comes from with this team and this franchise, and the history behind it, and why it means so much to myself and his grandparents, my parents, and so on. For me, that's what kind of this year is all about, and I'm going to try to continue to lean into that. I got a quote of the week coming up in just a minute. I can't believe we're at 53 minutes here on a solo show. You guys have been absolutely awesome. It really means a ton for so many people to come in on this chat on a Sunday night and bounce ideas. And I love like the conversations that go on amongst you guys. It's awesome to see Sox fans conversing, and, we're out there. Sometimes you got to look a little bit more difficult, but we're there, and it's awesome to rub shoulders with like-minded people. And that's what I think this Sunday is. It's a little bit of therapy. It's a little bit of checking in. And it was good to have you out and jumping into the chat. And if you're listening in the audio, which is available absolutely everywhere find your podcasts, thank you so much for the dedication and the support, and talking this podcast up to other people that are looking for a fan-centric perspective. I'm not going to bog you down in numbers and stats and metrics, and I'm not. There's other podcasts that do that, and that's great. We're not a numbers oriented. I'm kind of going to give it to you from my perspective and what I've seen over the years, and so I do appreciate that. Up next for our White Sox, they've got the LA Dodgers. How about that? And then that series with the Rockies, the two worst teams in all of baseball, battling it out during this holiday week. A safe and happy 4th of July week to you and your family. Lot of great memories of watching the Sox in person on 4th of July. The last one I can remember was the great Captain America Paul Konerko bobblehead giveaway on the 4th. I remember going to a lot of games as kids with the fireworks show and everything. That was an awesome way to spend your 4th. So hopefully you have a happy 4th, a safe 4th. Here's your quote of the week from Chris Getz. I like the group that we have here, Getz said during an early week media session. There could come a point at some time that we need to consider something to repurpose the talent on our roster. At this point, I want these guys to really enjoy being with the Chicago White Sox and getting comfortable at the major league level here. It's all about being comfortable. I think chemistry is underrated sometimes when it comes to a club. Yeah, talent, of course. Got to have the thumpers, got to have the hurlers. You got to have the conduits. You got to have the stable, the bullpen, and the bench guys. You got to have the talent, but you got to also have guys that are just grinding it out, that want to play for each other. It gets you through that long season. And from what I understand from that 05 team, they had it. And you just hope that these guys coming up kind of at the same time, they start developing that too. At least that's my hope. Hey, thank you so much for jumping in once again here on this Sunday night. Find the podcast absolutely everywhere. We're on Twitter X at Good Guys TB. For Pat Hester, I am Nick Murawski. Hey, until next time, go Sox.